Dr. Swamy needs no introduction, so let me now invite Subramanian Swamy. Let me invite Subramanian Swamy to please come to the podium and give us his remarks. I don't want to delay any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Vinod. This is probably the first ever conference I've attended which is the subject of Hindu economics. As a compliment to Professor Vinod that he found the courage to take up a subject which is not popular in the westernized Indian elite anyway, but it's now becoming increasingly popular to consider this in the Western countries. Recently there was a book published by Philip Goldberg which is titled as American Veda, and it's published by Rahul, I think. It's just come out, in which he says that there is growing fascination amongst Americans for Hindu concepts, and they find it more scientific. And the reason the Americans are finding it more scientific is being more explicitly stated by the editor of Newsweek, Miss Lisa Miller, who wrote a op-ed or a one-page article in the Newsweek about 2 years ago, which was titled, "Now We Are All Becoming Hindus." The Hindu concepts are now codified in terms of economics in another very recent book published by the Beacon Press. It's written by Bruce Rich, and the title of the book is "To Uphold the World, a Call for a New Global Ethic from Ancient India." And he details in that, after considerable research, how globalization can be modified by application of Hindu principles. Now, these are not Indians who are writing, these are not Hindus who are writing, and these are Americans who have been brought up in a totally different tradition and who are writing. We also find some other testimony to Hindu concepts in the journalistic writings of a well-known Hollywood actress by name Julia Roberts, who had come to shoot a film in Haryana, and she was so impressed by the fact that the people who are in poverty didn't seem to show any stress on their face. So she inquired from the people on the set, how is this possible? And they took her to a guru, and the guru explained the concepts by which the Hindu begins to accept that he is certainly free for performing actions, but the outcomes of it are not linearly related, if I may use a mathematical term, linearly related to his effort. And I was surprised to find that in Business Week there was an article, this again about 3 years ago, where they said that one of the things that the corporate world is to now grapple with is the increasing amount of stress that corporate executives are facing, because they're all the time in tension of making decisions and hoping that it will, serve the company. And in this stress, many of them become victims of heart attacks and other diseases. And Business Week writes that now a stylized version of the message of Bhagavad Gita is being taught to the executives, that you have only freedom of action. As Lord Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, that you will get a reward for your action, but in what form, in what time frame, that is not for you to decide. That is, there is no direct relationship between your efforts and the result of your action. So sometimes you may strive very hard and not get a result at all, or get an adverse result. Sometimes you may not strive at all, it may fall in your lap. And that is explained as the karma calculus. That it all adds up at a moment and then you get your reward. So I think, of course, in the case of Julia Roberts, she was so impressed that when she came back, she took her family and children and converted them to Hinduism. And as you know, you don't need a ceremony to become a Hindu. All you have to say is, I am a Hindu, and you are a Hindu from that day. So it is in this background of growing interest in the Western world. And this Western world, the growing interest is largely due to the fact that prosperity has not brought happiness. And the pursuit of happiness concept which the Americans have is actually pursuit of material happiness, but it doesn't give you total happiness. And that's why we find in India and in the United States as well, the monasteries which we call as ashrams are full of foreigners, and they are very rich foreigners. As a consequence, the Swamijis who run these ashrams have become rich themselves. They have corporate jets taking them around. Right now, Baba Ramdev travels in his own corporate jet. And consequently, one has to ask why Shri Ravi Shankar or Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who has an ashram also in Pennsylvania, why is it so crowded? Why is yoga become so universally acceptable? So these concepts being increasingly accepted, I think it's time for an intellectual exercise to codify this and see whether we can redefine economics in such a way that it can not only produce economic prosperity, but it can also produce genuine happiness. So that is the search for which we are at. We are in the preliminary stage, and I think this kind of conference needs to be repeated more often. Now, I'll begin first by an anticlimax by saying there is no such thing as Hindu economics. There is a Hindu school of economics, but there is no Hindu economics. Economics is a science of optimization in the use of scarce resources to achieve certain objectives. And as a consequence of that science, you derive the strategy for achieving it, and you build a financial architecture, as it's called, to be able to do it. So, therefore, that is universal, the science of optimization. What changes in the Hindu school of economics is the objective function or the objectives which you are going to pursue, by which you want to derive your strategy. Now, these objectives are to be defined by what I would call as Hindutva. Hindutva is a Sanskrit word means Hindu-ness. It's not a theological concept, but the quality of being a Hindu. You can have certain beliefs, you can practice yoga, but that doesn't make you a Hindu. You can read Hindu scriptures, doesn't mean that makes you a Hindu. But once you have imbibed that, you have acquired Hindutva. So Hindutva is a different concept from Hinduism. As somebody pointed out, there is no fear of fundamentalism taking root once you start talking in these terms. Because Hinduism is not, there's no a book to which you have to have complete loyalty. Hinduism doesn't have one prophet. It has no prophet, it has many prophets. In fact, we have prophets in practically every district of the country. And anyone can wear those, what they call it, the saffron robes, and then soon people will start following him. Even if they don't know, if you have the name Swamiji, even I get chased around, although mine is just a name, like in South India we use Swami very commonly. But the fact is that there is that respect which goes with wearing the saffron robes, and you find that all over the country. So, because you don't have a book, you have many books. Someone describes Hinduism as a cafeteria religion, where you go and pick what dishes you want. The same way you pick up whichever book you want. All kinds of ideas are being expounded. There is of course a common theme which we call as Hinduism, and that would be first and foremost that all religions lead to God. Now there is no other religion I know which actually preaches that. All other religions preach that only my way can lead you to God. God, I mean, they may say my God, they may call it by a different name. But the fact is that Hinduism doesn't mean that Hinduism says all religions are equal. You can have a village road and a turnpike, and we think that Hinduism is turnpike. You can go faster to God through Hinduism than you can go by a village road. But the fact of the matter is that this one distinguishes Hinduism from every other religion. The second thing is this karma calculus, as I call it, that whatever good work you do will be rewarded, whatever bad work you do, you will be punished for, and there is no escape. The praying to God will not save you on that, and that God maintains a register, or like a chartered accountant, he maintains your karmas, and accordingly. At most prayer can do is they can give you an advance payment of a good karma. Instead of it coming on schedule, they can give you like your provident fund or your pension. It can be given, a part of it can be given in advance. Yes, it can be cashed earlier. Therefore, the best thing to do is to pray that all your bad karmas are cashed in your young age, so that you can live a nice, healthy old age. Then the concept of rebirth, which is not there in any other religion. Then there is the concept of darshan. That is, you can, no matter what big sinner you may be, criminal, whatever, if you follow the discipline prescribed, you can see God in this life. There is no other religion, perhaps with the exception of some of the teachings of Jesus Christ. And we know that Bible was not written by Jesus Christ, it was written by St. Paul. So that is not reflected in the Bible. But generally speaking, all religions say you can see God only after your life is over. So therefore, This is a religion which says, no, you can see God in your lifetime. But these are the disciplines you have to follow. Now, Hindu society, and this is where the crumbs comes in, and how these ideas can be applied for our present day globalized world. Hindu society was to be structured so that it remains stable. As a fact of the matter, as someone pointed out earlier in the session, that we are the longest continuing civilization in the world. And that's a fact. Now what is it that kept it going? Two great rishis, as they are called, the seers, one by named Rishi Bhrigu and another by the name Rishi Bhardwaj. They debated this question: how should a society be structured so that it becomes stable and remains stable? And there grew the concept from where Rishi Bhrigu, he formulated the concept of Varna. And Varna is not caste. Caste is a word which the Portuguese gave, costos or something like that. It had no, it has no fundamental bearing. Actually, the word caste doesn't quite fit in, but let me explain what Varna is. What Rishi Bhrigu said is that in a society there are four sources of power. One is education, or what he called as learning. The second was weapons. The power you get by holding weapons. The third is the power of wealth. And the fourth is the power of land. And Bhrigu said that society can be stable only if these four are separated. That the person who has knowledge doesn't have weapons, doesn't have wealth, and doesn't have land. The person who has weapons cannot make policy. That is the department of the people with learning. And the person who acquires wealth will be doing the right thing only if he takes to philanthropy. That is, after meeting his needs abundantly, the rest he donates to society. And land is for those who will produce for society, not for purely commercial purposes. These are the four, and they were named as Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. A fifth category microscopic category was created for those who committed social crimes, and they were pushed out of society. What now is being called as the untouchables or the scheduled caste. But the important thing was, Bhrigu made it very clear, and Lord Krishna repeats this, it has nothing to do with birth. It's a code of discipline. It's your quality. If anybody from any caste, if he decides to pursue learning, and in the process he gives up weapons, he gives up wealth, property and land, then he qualifies to be a Brahmin. But in society he will have the highest status. I remember when I first came as a graduate student to Harvard, my American classmate asked me, how can you have Mahatma Gandhi as your leader? So I said, why he can't be a leader in the United States? He said, no, because in the United States if he tried to become a leader, we will put him in jail for indecent exposure. Because Gandhi only had a piece of cloth, and millions are following him. You look at the Western world, the leaders are the best dressed people. Whereas in India you will find the more venerated a person is, the more he gives up, the more venerated he is. These monks wear little, they are not like the Pope or the archbishop who is in all the finery. Well, yes. And so this shows that once you acquire the status of a learned person and you give up all this, you are elevated to the highest. And the king has to come to you to seek permission, to declare war, to give punishment. So in that sense, India was not a monarchy, where the monarch would decide when to go to war, when to give punishment. It's a totally different structure in society, but it had nothing to do with birth. As I think Anil Chawla pointed out, I think he was in a hot mood, used language which he shouldn't have, but he had a point. You take, who wrote the Ramayana? Valmiki wrote the Ramayana. Who were his parents? They were what we call today as the Dalits, the scheduled caste. But he became Maharishi and he wrote the Ramayana. Who wrote the Mahabharata? Vedavyasa. Who was his mother? She was a fisherwoman. Similarly, Vishwamitra was considered the Rishi of Rishis. He was born of Kshatriya parents. And he became so powerful that even the gods got afraid of him. He told the gods that, I want to be part of I want to travel to heaven, and they said no, so he said, I'll create an alternative universe. And then the gods surrendered and then gave him access to the heavens. He tried to send somebody up to the heavens, and the heavens sent that person back, so that's why the Trishaku concept of being suspended came up. Keeping in limbo, yes, that's right. So here Kalidasa, the greatest poet we have ever produced, he was a hunter. He used to hunt animals. Ravan was a Brahmin, by the way. And he was slayed by a Kshatriya, Rama. And that is because he broke the law. So even if you are a Brahmin, you are not above the law. You may be the most venerated part of society. So I'm first of all saying this is the division of labor which we talk about so much in economics. The Hindu division of labor is very clear, and it has proved to create a stable society. And I don't know whether we can modify what is happening today, because everything is now birth related. How it happened, we don't know. And when it happened, probably about 1,200 years ago. But before that, the mobility between one Varna and another Varna was common, depending on what disciplines you agreed to accept. Now, India, this kind of a system produced enormous economic growth. India became the most developed country. Some people bracket China with it. Sometimes in their enthusiasm for praising China, they say China was better. But both of them together accounted for, as late as 1500 BC, they accounted for 54% of the GDP of the world, the two countries together. In Massachusetts, near Boston, the suburb of Boston, there's a town called Belmont, where most of the Harvard professors live. And there's a huge lake there. And they have put a road around the lake. So for morning walk, it's a very popular spot. And I also, when I go every year to teach at Harvard. And this year also I'll be coming on 23rd of June, and I'll stay till the 8th of August for the summer term. Now, when you go for a walk, you see a signboard by the edge of the pond, says, here stood Tudor Ice Company which exported ice to India. So I was a little puzzled, why would anybody export ice to India? And how could they do and put 1636 there? So I went to Google and, found out whether there was something called a Tudor Ice Company. I found there was a book. So I ordered for that book and I read it, and what it says is that American traders used to go to India, to Kanchipuram, the southern part of India. And they were trading with India. They go buy up everything, cloth, spices, all that. And then they would go back. One day the king called them the king of Kanchipuram, the Chola king, he called them for an audience. And he asked them how they felt and how they were doing. They said, we have only one complaint, that we come with empty ships and buy in your country and go back. You should buy something from us. So he said, what can I buy from you? We produce everything in our country. So when they pressed hard, he said, I've never seen ice in my life, because in Tamil Nadu there will be sea ice. And I have to go very far up north to see ice. But I'm told in your country you have 5-6 months of nothing but ice. So you bring ice, I will buy it. So when fresh pond in Belmont froze, they cut up the ice, the ice, the frozen part, put sawdust on it, and took it all the way to India to sell it. That was the trade relationship between India and the United States. And of course it's now got practically reversed. I wouldn't say that we are exporting ice to the United States now, but anyway, the fact of the matter is that the economic boom that India produced is attested by Chinese travelers from Europe, Vasco da Gama, even as late as Mark Twain. They attest to this stuff. And that is why these invasions took place. Sometimes young students and lecturers in India, they ask me if we had such wonderful, I think the way in which one person was asked in the morning session, if we were so good, then how is it that these people came from abroad and conquered our country? What is our weakness? There too you find the civilizational values we had for warfare came in against us, worked against us. The Hindu rule for warfare was, war will not be fought unless the sun rises. The moment the sun sets, you have to go back to your tent and go to sleep and come back the next day. Second, you will not fight in the towns, inside the towns and the villages, but you will, or not on the fields, but you will fight on the barren open ground. That's why the Kurukshetra was an open ground. When Ravan wanted to fight Ram, he had to come out of his fort. He didn't say, come inside the fort and fight me. He came out of the fort and fought Rama on the open ground. And third, once you have lost and you say, I'm sorry, everything is given back to you and you are sent back home. And in fact, one Muslim conqueror came 16 times, Muhammad Ghori. And on the 17th time, he became victorious because of a betrayal from within the family of the king, who defeated him the previous 16 times. So this system of warfare was flouted by those who came abroad, but nevertheless, this society resisted right to 800 years of Islamic rule, 200 years of Christian rule through the British imperialism, and in the end, India is still 180% Hindu. It was 100%, it is still 80%. Compare this with what happened to Iran. Iran was 100% Zoroastrian, and Islam conquered Iran. Within 15 years, they became 100% Muslim. The same thing with Babylon, which is now called Iraq. Same thing happened with Egypt. And Europe was Christianized in less than 5 decades. But here, 800 years of Islamic rule and 200 years of Christian rule, and still you are 80%, it means that the resistance was there, and of course the resistance is not recorded in the history books written during the British times, which we have still not changed. But the fact of the matter is, this is a factor. So some of these principles may not be suitable for the current situation. So they have to be modified. So what is it that ultimately I want to say about the line of attack we should have for developing a Hindu school of economics? First and foremost is, I would say, based on reading the writings of all those Westerners who have admired India, talking to a large number of Americans who have come to the ashrams of various gurus, I would say that what appears very clear is that the one-dimensional or single-minded pursuit of material happiness does not really result in happiness, and that there needs to be a pursuit of material happiness or materialism, or material pursuit has to take place, but it must be moderated by principles that arise from spiritual level. That harmonization is necessary. If you go back to Sanatana Dharma, when it was pointed out that this Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, it is invariably, since Dharma is the first element in that, it is this harmonization that is the core of Hindu thought. The Western thought is pure material growth, and it is the pursuit is that. And material growth, when it is not moderated by spiritual values, leads to greed, and greed will lead to corruption. Today there is more corruption because globalization has given you enormous opportunities. And in this pursuit of materialism, you have become greedy. And that corruption is become a factor. So in order to meet corruption also on a long-term basis, you can have short-term measures, certainly, like catching people, putting them in, and we are trying to do our best in India. For the first time, 2 ministers are inside jail, and the daughter of the chief minister is inside jail. Some 3 more are to go just now. As soon as I go back, the hospital starts. So this has never happened in India. But that is not long-term. Long-term needs a mental change. And the mental change has to be brought about by moderating your spiritual pursuit by spiritual values. Also moderating your material pursuits with spiritual values. And that means, again, rethroning the fact that a person who does not have wealth but has learning, he should come to the apex of society. How that can be done in a proper manner, I would say in the intermediate stage, perhaps we must get rid of caste. By the way, caste has no racial basis, despite all the British historians' books about India written. The recent DNA results, research done in the University of Houston, in Cambridge University and in India, show that our DNA, India's DNA is all the same. And I, in fact, once had tested this out. There was one factional leader in Bombay called Raj Thackeray who ran a campaign saying that all the taxi drivers should be thrown out of Bombay because they come from Uttar Pradesh and therefore they are not our people. So I was able to secretly get a sample of his hair, and I got a sample of the hair of a taxi driver, and compared them, both have the same DNA. So I announced that, in fact, this was so, and it was never challenged. Now it has been established that we are all of the same DNA. So at least I think the intermediate stage, we should be all Indians. And this Varna concept, if it is to be brought back, has to be done by a different process. So first and foremost is the economics. The Hindu school of economics must say that the goal of economics is a harmonization of material pursuit. I mean, you may have this material pursuit by optimization in the use of scarce resources as before, but it should be moderated by spiritual values. And that would mean changing certain ways of doing it. If you go to a classic economics textbook, they teach you consumer behavior is maximization of utility, subject to a budget constraint. I would say the Hindu approach would be minimization of the expenditure, subject to a utility constraint. That is, you must attain a certain level of living and standard of living, and within that, the allocation should be done by minimizing the expenditure or minimizing the cost of input subject to a minimum output, that is the maximization of productivity. So I think, we can accommodate this mathematically in the same way that so far we teach economics, not very radically different. But the fact is that all the different sectors, that's why I say economics is a universal principle. Economic principles are universal. But the objective function which you choose, that changes. The other factor which I must point out, which Hindus have consistently been emphasizing, for consistency, a consumer will, if he prefers coffee to tea and tea to Coca-Cola, then it is rational to assume that he would also prefer coffee to Coca-Cola. If he prefers coffee to tea and tea to Coca-Cola, then he must prefer coffee to Coca-Cola. That is called the principle of transitivity. That is called consistency. Now, I would say that this principle doesn't work when you take a majority vote. If you have number of individuals with saying their own choices, somebody may prefer tea to coffee and coffee to Coke, or someone may prefer Coke to coffee and coffee to tea, etc. If you write down all that, it's very easy to show. And in my paper I have given this example. It's easy to show that majority votes, it's possible by majority the society may prefer coffee to tea, and by majority prefer tea to Coca-Cola, and yet prefer Coca-Cola to coffee. It is inconsistent. So individually you may be consistent, each may be consistent, but collectively you are not. So a certain conflict resolution has to be worked out. And Hindu principles are always for this harmonization, this conflict resolution. Hindus have placed great emphasis within the family. That's why we have such a low divorce rates, because of the fact that there's always this pressure to have conflict resolution and to resolve by discussion and talk out a way. And this principle is also to be applied in economics. I have in my paper, therefore, listed 9 new postulates that a Hindu school of economics must adopt. And from that I have derived how the economic development, how the economic plans, or how the economic strategy should be evolved. These are all developing areas. I mean, I have no final answers. I may, continue to revise depending on the inputs I get. What I've learned in this conference will certainly go to revise my paper to some extent before it goes for publication. But I think we Hindus appear to have an answer to this present problem, in the world of greed, and greed can only be got rid of if the present catapultation, the present social hierarchy built on your wealth. If you make the Forbes list, you are on top of the social hierarchy. That must be given up, and we must extol other virtues, particularly those who are in learning, those who protect the country. Those should be higher values, while not condemning acquisition of property. But the acquisition of property without philanthropy, that is against Hindus. And that's why Mahatma Gandhi said, treat yourself as trustees. Make the money you want, but then in the end you should treat yourself as trustees of society. So no social order based on the needs of globalization is necessary. For the research is necessary. You have started a process. I must congratulate the Fordham University for enabling Professor Vinod. Thank you very much.
This